6, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting. I'm Jennifer Connor, Clerk of Ramara Township. I'll begin with roll call of council. Mayor Clark.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Bell.
Present.
Councillor Snutch.
Present.
Councillor Fisher.
Present.
Councillor Tuyu. Present. Councillor Goff.
Present.
Councillor Bell.
Present.
Thank you.
This meeting is being streamed live on the Township of Ramara YouTube channel. Be advised that by attending a public meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Township of Ramara, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded, and they will form part of the recording. The chair, CAO, and/or clerk have the discretion and authority to terminate or interrupt the live streaming in exceptional circumstances where the content of debate is considered inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate behavior and/or comments.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of council? Didn't see any on there. Deputations and presentations, we have none. So administration and finance personnel, Councillor Snutch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have two items on the agenda today. The first one is 4.1 is the Seabright Cemetery Management and Updated Bylaw. The recommendation is that report CDO 125 be received and that the amended Seabright Cemetery Bylaw be forwarded to council for adoption. Can I have somebody put that on the floor? Thank you, Mr. Goff. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Questions or, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Just a very quick one. How many do we have now? Cemeteries.
We have one active cemetery. The rest have all been closed.
The rest are closed, they're full. So this is the only one that's active. Okay.
Sorry,
Thank
I
you.
apologize. Soon we'll be playing the Leafs Stanley Cup song. Sorry, go ahead.
Always hope.
Any other questions? All right, all in favor? That is passed. Item 4.2, the council information package, CDO 225. The recommendation is that we receive the staff report, CDO 225 as information. Can I have someone put that on the floor? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Comments or Mr. Mayor?
Just one comment where it says we received from the public. So would this be an association from the public or individuals? That where it says public emails are put on the CIP, because if somebody's writing an individual counselor, then they should be encouraged to reach us through our own website, not through staff. That was a discussion we had a while ago. Can you let us know?
Yeah, so if they email individual counselors, it won't be on the CIP, but if they ask for it to be made public, then it will be.
But see, that gets into a whole concern here. If it's made public, then somebody's going to edit, because in the past, we've had people putting identifiable properties, all kinds of things on.
Right.
council
So
agenda.
anything that's in violation of MFIPA won't be placed on the CIP.
Okay.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. My question is around communication as well. And there's a few different things. In April of 2023, we removed the ability for the public to communicate. And we said you can only communicate if you email council directly. And then I guess CC all council members and or the CAO and or the clerk. I always ask people to do both of those just to ensure that the communication actually makes its way to the administration. So that's one issue, which if that's still a standing bylaw. So any change to that, we would have to then revisit that, rescind that motion, whatever we need to do with it. So number one. Number two, I have a number of residents who have engaged in the process as far back as 2023. There have been as many as 50, 55, 60, 65 and more emails sent to council on a given topic. No one on council recognized that those emails were received. They were not placed on any communication via website or any other method. And what that really ends up doing is sort of sending the message to the public that nobody was interested in the matter, which is not the truth. And so I think this is not so simple. We need to do a little bit more work on communication. So one of the things is we removed the council at Ramara address. We have had one council member make the statement, if you forward me something, I don't read it. And I have one specific and particular resident who has set a reminder to resend the same email. It's been sent 4 times now, and to date, this particular individual has not been responded to. So I don't think I'm going to be satisfied with just sort of a willy-nilly procedure. I would like to have a specific procedure that says the public is allowed to speak to us, which they are supposed to be allowed to speak to us in a democratic process. So I'm looking for a policy. So I'm going to put a motion on the floor that staff returns with a policy and reports back on how specifically the public is going to be able to communicate and how that communication is going to find its way to the public domain. And then I don't want to be putting ever again a motion on the floor that doesn't have a timeline or a parameter around it. So I'm also going to ask for that report to be returned by the February meeting. I can't see it being a very difficult staff report to pull together. If February doesn't work, I'm no one's boss. We're supposed to be 7 collective bosses. So as a result, I would be amenable to, March. So I would have to look to the CAO to understand what kind of timeline would be required. And then I will place my motion based on that response. So if that's.
So are you looking for a response from the CAO at the present time on when this can be done? And then you're going to put forward a motion?
Yes, thank you.
I don't know, Mr. Dunn, if you'd like to respond, or if who's responding over there? There's 2 of you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could provide an initial response, and then I will defer to the Chief Administrative Officer, Ms. Jackson. Councillor Bell's query is all around the package of information that comes to council, the communication that is in that council information package from members of the community, and to have a better clarification for folks that do submit something into that council information package, A, how it ends up on the agenda, and B, what the follow-up from an acknowledgement perspective would be. I believe that's what Councillor Bell was looking for, but I'll defer to Ms. Jackson on clarification and timing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly given the opportunity to sit down with the clerk to fully understand the process in which the public has the opportunity and the ability to communicate through council is something that I would absolutely endeavor to do over the next few weeks so that I fully understand. Councillor Bell has suggested that perhaps there are some holes in the ability to communicate with members of council. So if I could, through you, Mr. Chair, certainly be given that opportunity to better understand with the clerk what the opportunities currently are for the public to communicate, what the history is, and then moving forward, what the best opportunities would be. I would endeavor to do that over the next few weeks in terms of if a motion is passed by council directing staff to prepare a report, certainly we could look at that opportunity. I would suggest that probably a March or early April timeframe might be an appropriate timeframe, but certainly would ask the clerk just based on her workload as to whether that would actually be reasonable timeframe or not.
Before we go to the mayor, I have one comment. I don't see any, I've never had a situation where someone has said to me that we didn't get back to them. I always get back to everybody. If I find there's no action being taken, I move it up the ladder a little bit and say, did you see this or whatever? So I think what we've got right now is quite fine, but I'll go over to Mr. Mayor.
Well, that's where I am in agreement. My concern is the public here. The public has the right to reach out to staff, absolutely, 100% of the time. Our job and what we're elected to do is we're the liaison between the public and staff. So if council wants to come to us, they do not go through staff. They need to come to us directly, and we take their concerns to staff. And by including it in here, you're actually doing it backwards. You've got public reaching out to staff to get to council, and that is incorrect. We all have websites, we all have phone numbers, and they're all posted. We are the liaison between the public and staff. That's why we're elected. So I don't think the public should be writing the CIP. They need to email counselors directly. If counselors choose not to call somebody back or email them back, then my advice to that individual in the public is don't vote for those counselors next time around, because they're not serving you. If there's an issue that a member has or a public has that's brought to a council member, you don't throw that person under the bus and say, I got this email, I want it on the agenda, and we got to pass a bylaw. You just simply bring a bylaw on behalf of your people. And that's why the direction from the public to council has to come direct, not through secondhand. So I think the public should not be writing to council through staff. Any emails directed to council need to come directly, unfiltered, to the council members. So that's where I hold firm.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you. So we're talking about two different things. Number one, every single email I receive, I respond to. Every single social media call or every single text. I don't discern. I don't tell the public how to talk to me. However they want to reach me, that's where and how I talk to them. What I'm talking about is, for example, physician recruitment. I can't remember the exact number. I have to pull it open. I believe I had 55 responses within 24 hours. Those 55 responses were A, not recognized, and B, not placed on agenda. So therefore, what the public thinks is that nobody was interested in the topic of physician recruitment. That's just not true. I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Daly after his first presentation and before the procedure bylaw made its way back to the agenda. Mr. Daly suggested that as a matter of procedure and course in his experience, excuse me, are you having a side conversation? Okay, thank you. Mr. Daly suggested that as a matter of course, what is done through proper procedure would be that the clerk would take those 55 emails, for example, and break that information down into it could be something like yes or no, but there would be a way of communicating to the public that there's a matter being considered by council. So we do have a problem because, as I just said, we have council members who don't respond. And those council members, I'm sorry to say, are above me, because what happens is if somebody speaks to a member of council who's a mayor or a deputy mayor, well, mind you, you only have one vote each as well. So you're certainly not above me, but the public sometimes thinks the mayor or the deputy mayor is above me. You haven't responded to them. So that's your purview, and you're right. Maybe that will ensure you don't get elected the next time, and that's your business. But that doesn't solve where we're sitting right now. So we have members of the public who don't necessarily understand processes and procedures, and to them, municipal government is this great big animal. So they do what they think is right, and then somehow their communication disappears. So I don't just have one example. I've got physician recruitment. I've got the $1 million allocation of CCBF that was never actually allocated. I have physician recruit. I've had concerns about parking in Lagoon City, for example. So it's not that simple. There needs to be a method of collecting information when the public speaks to us on a matter, and then letting the public know that that matter is of interest and that it merits discussion. So I'm going to put the motion on the floor that based on the timelines we just received, we have a staff report coming back that's going to clarify to the public how communication is received and how it's disseminated, and where they can learn about ongoing and emerging concerns that are related to end agenda items in the Township of Ramara, and that would be returned on the first Committee of the Whole meeting in April, the regularly scheduled meeting.
So I have a comment. So you've received all these emails on the physician recruitment. I have not received any. And I would think if it was me, then I would be bringing it up at the Committee of the Whole, saying that I've received 55 letters. Can we make a statement about what we're planning on doing? It doesn't matter if it's that situation or garbage or anything else. It's up to the councillor to decide to bring the information to council. And if they don't, they have an ample, we have deputations that are available for people to, sorry. You're gonna, all right.
I was just going to say on that, yes, we have a deputation process if somebody wants to actually reach council, but there is a strict criteria of that. And yes, we did have a recorded vote on the doctor recruitment. It did come as a separate motion and was voted on.
Okay, I thought you was referring to 55 letters because of that decision. Sorry, not that it was that decision. So it did come. But anyways, at this point, let's have your motion.
I just said
Well,
the motion.
repeat it and we can vote on it.
My motion is that I'd like a staff report returned that clarifies how communication.
That's fine. Thank you, Councillor Goff. Once Councillor Bell has read her motion, we'll just need a seconder.
Yep. Go ahead, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. My motion is that I'm requesting a staff report be returned by the April Committee of the Whole meeting that speaks to how the public can communicate what their concerns are with regard to matters before council. And that would include such as how do a series of emails on a particular topic find their way to a council information package and agenda, whatever that looks like. So we need to make sure that the public is aware of ongoing and emerging concerns. So if the clerk would like to find a way to disseminate that into a more reasonable motion, I'm amenable to that, and I would be willing to hold off for a moment to allow that to happen.
Well, I think we're fine. Do we have a seconder for that? All right, so it has been second. All in favor? That is declined. And let me see here. That's it. I thought we usually go into, no, I guess not. So I'll turn it back to the mayor then. I thought there.
We need a motion to
Chances for-
receive the report.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So the original motion of the staff received CDO 225 as information. All
I
in
still have a
favor?
question on
Oh,
it though.
sorry,
I
go
still
ahead.
didn't get an answer. So what exactly is coming from the public in the CI? Like if it's an association, I get it. If it's individuals, I believe they need to be directed directly to council members.
If it's a email that we receive that is for council, it'll be forwarded to council members. But if they ask for it to directly be put on an agenda, it would be forwarded to the CIP.
Well, I don't want to be disrespectful to the public. The public don't make the agenda. The agenda is the business of the township. If the public wants something on the agenda, it's a deputation. Then they come and do a deputation. They do not demand that emails or any other item be put on a council agenda. The agenda is for the business of the township. And the agenda is done either through motions of council, that business that we deem necessary, or the regular business as the clerks do the agenda. The public do not make the agenda. That's why we're elected. If the public want us to bring something to the table, they need to approach the councillors and we bring it to the table. If we're not interested, they need to approach another councillor. If they can't get a councillor to present it, then they do a deputation. That's how the public get information on the agenda, through a proper deputation, not through emails. So I would like the public removed from the CIP package, then I would move that amendment. Because it's not the proper way for the public to communicate with council.
I agree, because you don't know what's in the letter at that
Yeah.
point. So Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, it's a little bit just going backwards. I just want to address a comment that was made that there was emails that were not responded to. If somebody sends me an email and asks me and tells me their opinion on a certain subject and they want me to know that before deciding at council or committee of the whole, it doesn't mean I didn't respond. They didn't ask for a response. There was no question. I think many of us are in the same boat. I consider those while I'm making my decision at committee of the whole and council. That's my job. Just wanted to clarify that.
All right. So is there any?
I moved an amendment if I could have a seconder to remove public from the CIP.
I still had some conversation, actually.
Well,
Hold on a second. He's got a motion on the floor. So do we go for a seconder now then? Seconder, Deputy Mayor has seconded. And sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Andy.
Sorry, just to clarify that this council information package is part of our procedure bylaw. So we will need to bring the procedure bylaw back to amend,
Okay,
just to make
and I
sure.
will leave it at that then. So I guess I'm looking for the same clarification. Like if it's a request of council, then it needs to be forwarded to council. You don't want to wade into the politics here. But it's not an avenue that folks can have something put on the agenda. It needs to be done through proper channels.
Yeah, there could be some real crazy things that people
Yes.
try to put on the agenda that we don't even want to waste. And it could be a crazy thing. So it's
Yeah.
got to go to the council and it's got to come up the ladder.
Yeah.
So did your motion to be voted on now, or did you back that?
Well, I'm trying to get clarification of the rules now. Like it's up to counselors to look at the CIP and decide what goes on the council. But if it's from the public, it shouldn't be going on the council. One, you need the permission of the individual that wrote it. But secondly, the public are reaching us politically, not to be put on the agenda. So what does it might direct it to the CIP, but that should not get on the council agenda.
So we could remove item 15.3 from the procedure bylaw, and we would have to bring that back to council. And that would remove communication from the public going on to the council information package.
Right. Then that would be my motion.
Councillor Goff.
I was gonna say, why don't we wait and see what our new CAO, when she investigates all this?
Well, we don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, my experience in the past with council information package process is it's information that is provided to council as a for your information only. No action to be taken, and more times than not, it's perhaps from associations and so on and so forth. And so my understanding with the intent of this is very similar. It's just for your information correspondence. Certainly, in terms of the detail of your constituents, my past experience has been that if a member of the public wishes to address council, it would be a letter to mayor and members of council, and then that is either placed on the agenda or responded to accordingly by staff. So certainly I will be, through you, Mr. Chair, spending time and energy on understanding how the public communicates with council. But in terms of this specific issue, it's my understanding that the CIP is set up just to streamline your agenda process. You will have the opportunity to pull any of those items if you so choose, and then place them on the agenda. So certainly through you, Mr. Chair, to the clerk, perhaps I'm not sure if there's anything further that you wanted to add to make sure that council fully understands the intent of this process.
No, thank you, CAO Jackson.
Okay, Councillor Goff.
Based on what our CAO has said, I don't think we need to amend
Yeah, I'll defer
anything, right?
time. I'll
So-
reload and I'll have some more discussions over what exactly ends up in our agenda. And the reason I point out, because we have had some crazy letters end up in our agenda in the past, not this term, because we rectified it, including like stuff that had people's identifiable addresses, bylaw complaints, where I want this on the council agenda. Well, that's confidential, a bylaw complaint. And it should have been directed directly to the staff. And that's where the clarification we've always tried to fix. What's political and what should be directed to the bylaw? It's a roads complaint. It should go to the roads department. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get staff not making those political decisions. If it's a roads complaint, it shouldn't be in our CIP. It should go directly to the roads department. If they want to reach council members, then they should email us directly. I'm trying to get you guys out of the politics. So we'll sit down and we'll clarify it. I'll work with the clerk of the CAO.
Councillor Bell.
I just want to repoint something as well. I just pulled open the folder that contains all the physician recruitment emails, and you were copied on it. I could sit here and read them to you one by one. I'm not going to.
Well, that's good. I'm
but
glad you
could.
don't do that. But
Um,
hold on
and
a second, please. You
Can
made
you,
a comment
I do
towards
not
me.
interrupt me. That is a breach in procedure. You do not
it's
interrupt
not.
me. Okay, well, then I'll take it right
point-
to the
point of
deputy
order.
commissioner. You go.
Point of
Point
order,
of order
folks.
is mine. I've been interrupted. The point of order is mine. I've been interrupted while
I'm chairing.
No, the
I
point
doesn't
of
matter
order
who's
is.
chairing. The point of order is mine. You do not interrupt a member. You may not pass between the member when the member is speaking. I was halfway through a sentence. You will not interrupt me. I will
Actually, the
finish the
chair can
sentence.
interrupt the council
The
anytime
chair does
if the
whatever he
field.
likes. I'm very
The chair
aware.
can interrupt the
I'm
council
very aware. That
anytime
does not mean
when
it
the
is
councillor
acceptable
is off
procedure.
topic.
It does not,
Councillor
I'm not
Sutch is
off
chairing.
topic. I'm speaking to the matter at hand, and I would like to finish
The
my
councillor
statement.
you do not get to finish your statement if the chair does not allow it. Now, the chair asked you to stop so he could explain why you thought you were off topic. And you continued to argue with the chair. Now, Councillor Sutch is chairing. You say point of order, you can state what your point of order is. And I will handle all point of orders from this point forward because I actually chair the meeting. I'm handing over parts of the meeting to you, but I actually, it's still my meeting. I still chair the meeting. So Counselor Snutch, you're chairing. You have the chair back, sir.
Thank you. So Counselor Bell, when I said that I hadn't received any email, I thought you were talking about a current thing. I didn't think you were talking about which came to council before. So yes, if this happened 6 months ago, I got them. It was addressed by council. So now you can continue.
It wasn't 6 months ago. It was during budget discussions in October. The point though, and again, I repeat, I met with Mr. Daly after we received his first draft of the procedure bylaw and before he completed the procedure bylaw. And during our conversation, we talked exhaustively about communication. And the reason we did that is because he was here doing his presentation. Between the two of us, we had an interesting conversation. Mr. Daly was making assumptions, for example, that the public was allowed to communicate. And I was making assumptions that Mr. Daly knew the public is not allowed to communicate. So it took until we had a conversation after that presentation here in Chambers for the two of us to realize we were coming from, well, I realized while we were in Chambers, which is why I requested the meeting, which Mr. Dunn was kind enough to facilitate. And Mr. Daly was very clear in his messaging that when a matter is before council, and physician recruitment is a good one because it was recent, what would normally happen is the public would send those letters of support or not support, and the clerk would take those letters and disseminate them into an easy piece of information for council to receive. So it might have said something as simple as 48 people supported, 28 people did not. But there is a mechanism where the public can become aware that there is a trending matter at council. When it comes to private email addresses of council, it's wonderful that I speak to every single person who talks to me, but that doesn't tell the public that there's an ongoing or emerging issue. So Mr. Daly, who I believe has been in the business for a very long time, was quite clear in his communication to me that there is a mechanism for this kind of information to be made public. So I'm not going to be legal. You don't want the public to speak. That's the way it is. So I'm going to leave it be. We've already carried or not carried motions. So let's just move on.
Sorry, I guess I have to figure out where we are now. I guess we're going to vote to see that recommendation that we receive staff report CDO 225 as information. All in favor? Passed. I will now.
Thank you. Now we're on environmental services. Counselor Tuyu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are 2 items on the agenda today. The first one is 5.1, Drinking Water Advisory Communication Methods. So ID 0125, Drinking Water Advisory Communication Methods. Recommendation that we receive report ID 0125 regarding communication methods for drinking water advisories as information. Can somebody please put this on the floor? Councillor Goff and seconded by Councillor Fisher. Thank you. Thank you, Diana, for the detailed report. I guess she's not here, but before we get into questions and discussion, Josh, did you want to speak to it?
Thank you, Councillor Tuju. I believe everything's self-explanatory in there. The reason for this report, it was asked mid-year last year, how we communicate concerns within the water systems. So we're going through the different ways that we do communicate. We're trying to push everything online. So we do have the alertable, we have the new water meter reader software that's able to push out information. The smaller systems, typically when it's under 18 to 20, we will do hand notifications to the homes. If it is critical to let people know, we will hand deliver to every system if we have to, if there is critical concerns with the systems. But typically we're pushing through the online system, and with all our communications out to public, we're always trying to push out to public first to sign up onto the alertable and the water portal.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Goff.
Thank you. Through the chair to Josh. It was actually me that brought this forward because there was an issue in the Bayshore Village, and I'm glad you've put this out there so that it's out there and the public knows about it. I know the last time it happened when we had lost the pressure, I still had a resident reaching out that it wasn't good enough. They live on Southview and they're on the one side of the road, and they don't belong to the Bay Shore Association, so the association. So I don't know how we can solve that problem so that way everybody knows.
Yeah, so if we push out for people to sign up for either the alertable or the meter reader package that we just implemented this year, we did look at a couple trailers, variable message sign trailers. But due to the cost, they're about $20,000 each trailer. And depending on what water system you're at, it's not just one. So Bayshore, yes, there's one entrance into Bayshore Village, but yes, Southview is on there as well. So you need two at that area. Brecken, Lagoon City, it's all one system, so you'd need multiple trailers for there. They would work in instances like Davy Drive and Riverlea, because there's only one entrance in, one entrance out type thing. The easiest, most economical for us is through the online notification system. With our monthly communications out to public, we are putting information in there for people to get signed up. The water meter reader program, we do have 70 people signed up for that currently. We've only had that up and running since last quarter of last year. So we're pushing that out as well for people to sign up there, and we can get the messaging out that way as well.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Just one addition I wonder if we could have, which is, for example, the Lagoon City Community Association in Bayshore, they have their email chain that they have internally. So I don't know, and I know they change people all the time, so it can be really difficult. But I wonder if within the communication, I guess I should ask one thing. I know you do a lot of your communication yourself, and then other times communications does communication. So our communications from Ashley's perspective, she would just place it on the township social media, but then there is the social media of all those local groups. So I wouldn't expect anybody to be able to follow all those local groups, obviously. But if communications was able to contact via say social media as well, not just the township channel, but also those groups, then there would be a way. So for example, the LCCA members hub is private. So the only way the information could get in there would be if Ashley contacted the group and said, might you post this internally in your group? So I feel like that's a piece that we could add. It's not always going to work, but I'd like just to add to the social media piece that maybe the reach could be broadened, because the world turns on immediate information, and social media is the best way to do it. So whether that would be you guys with Diana, I don't know, or whether that would just be Ashley including that in her processes. I think it would be good if we could just expand that.
Yeah, for sure. I agree 100%. If there is contact information you can share, we can do that. We do currently communicate with the BVA, the Bayshore Village Association. So LCCA for sure. I believe all the posts we do put on social media are shareable. So as soon as they're out, if anybody sees it, they can share it as well. So.
Go ahead, Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. Question, even though it's kind of far away from where any of our water systems are, but it isn't one of the entrances into Ramara. At the Ramara Center is the digital sign. How easy is that to change? Is that something that's done on site, or is that something that can be done remotely as an FYI and then changed over? I mean, it's kind of broadcasting to the world, but if we have cottagers, we do have visitors to our community that might not get the information through the mailboxes or otherwise.
I'm pretty sure it has to be done on site, but I'll confirm. And if it is something we can do remotely, then yeah, it would be an option, especially if it's within an area over that way.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Snitch.
Draw my question. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, just
Sure.
speaking. Oh, go ahead.
Madam Chair, thank you. Just with respect to follow up on the concern, the question, the point put forward by Councillor Bell. When Ms. Watson is back, Ms. Jackson, perhaps there's an opportunity to find an efficient way of working with the private social media platform providers by having them point back to the township social media platform, ensuring one message, the message on behalf of the the corporation and it's consistently distributed. Just making sure that they point back instead of replicating on their platform, point back to the township social media feed. Perhaps that would be helpful, and certainly I know Ms. Jackson will be looking forward to the opportunity to meet and follow up with Ms. Watson.
Thank you. That's a good point. I know for the purposes of my street, we have our own Facebook group, and I always share this type of Facebook post from the township directly to that page. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so let's receive report ID 0125 regarding communication methods for drinking water advisories as information. All in favor? That's passed. Okay, second item is 5.2, Phragmites invasive species. AD 0125. Recommendation that we receive report AD 0125 as information and that staff apply for the Invasive Species Action Fund grant for education and control initiatives. Can somebody please put this on the floor? Deputy Mayor Bell and Councillor Fisher. Thank you. Big thank you to Ashley for getting this on the agenda before the funding application deadline. Josh, before opening it up for questions and discussion, did you want to talk a little bit about your experience with how intensive the Phragmites removal process can be and how therefore important the funding is?
Yep, for sure. Thank you, Councillor Toujou. So this grant would assist us in investigating the areas where we do have issues with Phragmites, as well as to be able to control how to remove and eradicate the Phragmites. We did apply last year. We weren't successful. So this essentially is a mirror of what we applied for last year with a few tweaks. We did implement even though we didn't get the funding last year, we did implement through the website to start tracking. We've had a few areas come in that have been confirmed, but Phragmites is a huge issue everywhere, and it just seems to be expanding and growing no matter where you go.
Thank you. Yeah, so this funding would be really welcome. Go ahead, Councillor Snutch.
Can you just explain, Dana, the danger and what the problem is with this evasive growth or plant or tree or whatever you call it, grass? I'm not sure what you even call it, but
it's the common reed. Yeah, it's from Asia, and it's somehow gotten here, and it's just choking out wetlands, basically making it very difficult for our native plant and wildlife species to thrive. And it's very rapid spread. And that the key is sort of getting ahead of it before it becomes too much. And I know that we do have some pockets that have been identified, and I just really think it's so important that we put our efforts into it.
yeah, I just think a lot of the public that I've talked to aren't even aware of what it is. So, I mean, basically it gets so thick that when the turtles and that want to go through to the other side, they can only make it about halfway, and then they don't have any energy to get back out, and they die from lack of food, lack of water.
Yes, it's very thick. It's almost like bamboo. It grows that fast and thick, and things can get stuck inside, and that's, you're right, they can't get out.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. I don't know if you can speak to this or not, Josh. What are the parameters around this fund? Is this something, because I know that there's a problem on our municipal properties, but there's a large problem on private properties, which of course we have no control over. Is this fund either large enough, or do we even have the mechanism should we be successful with this grant, to offer some type of incentive to encourage private property and private landowners to remove the Phragmites from their own property?
I am going to have to confirm if that's possible. I don't believe it is, but I'd just like to double check and confirm if it is or not. I don't believe we can incentivize it with the grant for public property. I think it's more for municipal property at this point in time.
Right, but even the educational value of getting that out there, I think everybody would want to do what they could. So, and even in terms of it's not having been accepted last year, there have been changes at the Invasive Species Center. Colin Casson, who made the deputation to us about the funding last year, he's actually the executive director now for the Invasive Species Center. So, Fingers crossed he remembers who we are. Okay, so does anyone else have any comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I did just want to remind folks that Colin Casson did do that presentation last year, and because we retained video for a year, it was on March 25th. So if there's anyone listening today, or maybe we can add to the highlights again, just a reminder that you can still go back and view that March 25th presentation, at least for a few more months. And actually the forum on Phragmites is coming up. I can email Ashley after and put that date on too as well for anybody who's interested. It's in the next little bit, quite soon.
Okay, so should we vote then that we receive report AD 0125 as information and that staff apply for the Invasive Species Action Fund grant for education and control initiatives? All in favor? Great, that's passed. Is there any unfinished or new business? No? Perfect. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, unfinished or new comes at the end of the meeting. We deal with the agenda items first now and then deal with the unfinished or new at the end. Okay, so anybody need a break? Everybody's okay? We need a break? All right, let's take a 10-minute break and then we'll be back 20 after 10. Got 1 minute. That's, no, it's 10:20. If I can get everybody back. Okay, Ashley, I guess we're ready to go live. Oh, it's Sarah back there. Hi, Sarah. Okay, we are live. I have my deputy clerk here. I don't see my clerk. If you can just verify that I still have a quorum.
Yes, I can confirm that you still have quorum, your worship.
Thank you. We're on protective services. Just a quick memo before I turn it over to Councillor Bell. 6.3 is still on the agenda for discussion, but the bylaw later has been removed because we got some feedback from our insurance company. So the bylaw will need to be changed, but the item is still on the agenda. So Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. I think probably most of us were going to want to pull it anyway, just until we had more time to look at it. Okay, so there's then just the two well, there's 3 agenda items. And the first is the Lagoon City on-street and municipal parking lot control options. And the recommendation is that I'm going to hold off on reading the whole recommendation because some other things have happened in the background. So if that's okay, can I just put the motion on the floor and then come back versus reading the entire massive motion? So if somebody can put that on the floor, please. Councillor Fisher, Councillor Goff. So I'll start, I guess, by prefacing the reason I don't want to read it all out is I received a phone call from a member of staff last week indicating to me that this agenda item was going to be pulled. It was an uncomfortable conversation for me and for the staff member because we had already, during discussion at the last committee of the whole meeting, stated that this item, actually the mayor agreed and stated that this item could and would go onto the agenda today. And obviously it couldn't have been more fortuitous since we have mountains and mountains of snow outside, and Simcoe Road is definitely a problem where snow clearance is concerned. So when that staff member telephoned me and said, I've been advised to remove this item. I don't know who advised for that item to be removed from the agenda, but it would have been inappropriate to remove it based on the fact that we've already said we were putting it on the agenda today. So what I said to the staff member was, I feel very badly that the two of us are having this conversation because it's inappropriate. And it should be, any conversation should be happening in the public domain. So I indicated that I felt it would probably be more appropriate to leave it on the agenda, and we could then have ensuing discussion about what we do next. And that from my perspective, as a matter of course, I'm just going to request that I don't receive any phone calls that are going to ask me to take action outside the public domain. And I apologize to that staff member that we had to have that conversation, but I didn't create it. I'm quite sorry it happened. The next thing I want to do before I go any further into reading this is get a point of clarification. The reason the phone call came to me was because I was told we can't get a legal decision, and we walked away looking for a legal decision. I think there's some confusion here about what this legal decision, or not decision, opinion, sorry. I think there's some confusion about what the legal opinion is that we're looking for. So I'm going to frame something and I'm going to ask the question, I think, because I don't know where we're going here. So my understanding is under the Highway Traffic Act, we're allowed to decide who can park where on our roads. That's what I had the opportunity to learn from infrastructure. The second thing is what we would need any kind of opinion on is, are we allowed to decide who can park in our parking lots? But what I think is happening here is there's some confusion, and I don't know. I don't really know how we got here. But I fear that some council members think that what we're getting a legal opinion on is whether people can go to the park. And so I'm not sure what we're doing here. Whether somebody can go to the park has nothing to do with who can park on our parking lot. So I guess I don't know where to go next, other than I'd like to ask Mr. Popple, could you please explain what legal opinion you're trying to get so that I know where to go next?
Thank you. Through you as the chair, the legal opinion was to determine whether we could completely restrict the parking of non-residents or individuals without permits in our municipal parking lot in Lagoon City. It had nothing to do with the on-street or restricting use of the park.
Thank you. So that helps, because then, so then there's what I would probably recommend doing then, if we feel that opinion needs to come back, is I wouldn't then put this motion on the floor. I would have to modify it because we still need to solve the problem of Simcoe Road. I first brought it in the winter of 22-3, and then it carried on to the winter of 3-4. Now we're in the winter of 4-5. There is absolutely no way that infrastructure can clean Simcoe Road when we have this kind of snow if there are trucks and trailers parked all over it. But beyond that fact, what started all of this over 2 years ago for me was that residents on Simcoe Road are afraid to go out their doors. They're afraid that their pets, if their pets go out the doors, there's a danger. We had properties damaged at that time. I brought photos of the damaged properties where retaining walls and things had been taken out. They're suffering trespass. All those things are happening. But right now, the biggest concern probably is going to be safety and winter clearance. We already have mountains of snow out there. So what I had recommended was that parking for recreational use be moved up to the Breckenball Ballpark. So what I want to do is break the motion, but I guess before I do that, I would go around the table and see if there's any discussion. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, yeah, no, I'm in support. We have to do something in Lagoon City. There's been parking problems there forever. Yeah, the motion is on the floor, but yeah, the way it's written, no, but if you're looking for a clear direction, just because this, like, we don't have all the information. Whereas the township adopted bylaw motion CW 6923, I don't have that here. I don't have it in the information, so I don't know what the bylaw says. But if you've got a direction where you would like to see no parking, absolutely, I'm open for that discussion because this has been a problem spot is at least 6 or 8 years now. So, but I can't support this motion all the way it's written, but if you've got changes for it, great.
So all of those CW numbers are carried motions that we passed over the 2 years or more that we've been trying to get this resolved, at least under me when I've been in Ward 5. I did some research on how motions are supposed to be written, and they are supposed to give your background and your reasons why you're bringing the resolution in your whereas statements. Your therefore statements are, or your resolution statements are all the actions you want to have taken, and then the direction statements to staff are specifically what you want staff to do, and they're to include the timelines. So typically in my experience on council, we have not been completing our resolutions and motions in that manner, which has probably contributed to the fact that this issue alone has lagged for 2 years. I don't feel that that's fair to staff because they can't carry out a resolution if they don't know what the direction of council is. So, in the end, all we're doing is we're sitting around a table spitballing, and then 2 years later, we're revisiting the same conversation. So I think that we need to do a better job of writing resolutions, and that's precisely why I wrote it this way. And so the initial whereas statement, it captures all of the carried motions that we had over the 2 years that brought us to where we are today, and then that resolution. So I will place my motion the way that it's written. And if you decide not to vote for it, I guess then you can amend it or whatever it is anybody else needs to do. That's the only way I can think to do it. Councillor Snatch.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. You said that you wrote this. Aren't these written by the clerks? I'm not confused.
I wrote the motion. I've written a number of motions, just like anybody around the table can do if you would like to place a motion on the floor. And then what has been asked of us by the clerks is that we present it to them ahead of time so that we aren't asking them to flail around in open session and try to catch all the different words and inside of our motions. Sometimes council, obviously, yeah, staff will put motions on the floor too if they're placing the agenda item. But yes, I did write this. Mayor.
I have no issue with that. But it's kind of written like a notice of motion, not an actual motion. So notice of motions are written within with the cooperation of the clerk's department, because again, we don't have the back information. It's great that it's here. This is how you would write a notice of motion. I guess my question is to the clerk, have we checked motion CW 6923 and CW 8420, or you would do that after, if council carries it, then you would go back and make sure that they were the relevant motions?
That's correct, your worship.
So it would be afterwards. Okay.
Deputy Mayor, I think you had your hand. No? Okay, any other discussion? Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I still have concerns over the issue with the legal opinion, whether or not we can actually have one of our parking areas done strictly for resident only and not. So I would like to have that opinion before we move forward on this. A couple concerns that I have, right? I still don't like the fact that the Labor Day, like the kiteboarding, how many parking spots are in that parking lot?
Sorry,
Yeah.
just can I interrupt for 1 sec? We're amending anyway, because we're waiting for the legal opinion. So the summer part of it, I'm gonna have to put an amended motion now. I'm gonna have to do Simcoe Road alone, and then, so the rest of it would be when that
Okay, do we
opinion comes
have
back.
a map of how many parking spaces are on Simcoe Road? Because I know usually it was from Lake Avenue south towards the lake that was parking.
Yeah, for Lake Avenue, you're typically about 10 cars, but when you're in the winter season, you get the truck and the trailers, you're 5 cramming in, maybe 7. The Lake Avenue parking lot, and I was just talking with John, I believe between the parking lot that's created and the mailboxes, maybe 20 spots there. But again, when you come in the winter with snowmobiles and trailers, you're probably cutting that in half. So there's not a lot of parking, but there is some parking down there.
That will follow up.
Yeah.
Do we still have on-street parking along the lake shore?
Yeah, so Lakeshore on,
From Simcoe Road towards
yeah, from
the third?
Simcoe Road on, I believe it's the west side of, or east side of the road. There's a section there that's permitted, and then Lake Avenue from Simcoe
To Ridge?
going, just before Ridge, because you get to the intersection there. There's parking permitted again on the east side, I believe it is there, so. So
'Cause
with those 2 areas, you're maybe another 10 parking spots.
Because I know anytime I've been down there in the wintertime, Family Day ice fishing, they have the event there at the fish hut Breaking Point. And I've seen Lakeshore almost all the way down to the third concession with people parking on it. I don't know if we want to extend the honk cap or make it a permit only parking. It just means that bylaw is going to have to spend a lot of time down there first thing in the mornings and giving tickets or not giving tickets.
Thank you. So what we had been talking about is putting winter recreation parking in Brecon Ballpark. So when the ballpark's full, there's nowhere else to park, so be it. That's just, the people on Simcoe Road can't be trespassed on, can't have their properties damaged. We've done something very similar in the north part of the township when Councillor Snutch needed to have cars removed from a road that was preventing waste being removed. In his case, I think it was more than it was snow removal for the area of Simcoe Road right now. Snow removal is one of the issues. That's not the only issue, and Family Day is a great example. There were numerous complaints that came in as infrastructure is now nodding. It was a giant problem last year. It's a huge safety concern. We cannot have trucks and trailers all over the roads. People can't pull in and out of their own driveways. So, I mean, I'm afraid to say at the end of the day, if all the parking we have is what's available at the ballpark, when it's full, it's full. And so get here early if you want to get a spot. I know for the business that operates down in the area, they made a private arrangement for parking, and that's on the business to carry on and do that. And I don't think it's, I understand that we want to offer access, but the area there is it's a residential community, so we can only offer what we can offer, and having trucks and trailers all over the roadways has not been successful. I see you want to say something else, so go ahead.
I understand what you're saying, Councillor Bell. If we were to make, I understand with Simcoe Road because it is a bigger through road with a lot of traffic on it. There's the entrances into Lagoon City. But I'm saying with Lakeshore, right? Maybe we need to make that an area because of where the honk caps, and we're actually generating another revenue source since you want to take one away from Lagoon City Park, Beach Park, right? That's, we just went through a difficult budget where our reserves aren't as high as what we would like them to be. And I think we need to look at any sort of revenue stream to help, so it's not coming off the back of our taxpayers. And I know that is a Lakeshore, there's parking there now. Whether it becomes permit and honk app paid parking. Okay, I have,
Yeah, if I can just clarify through the chair. So Lakeshore from Simcoe Road all the way to the extremity is currently permit parking only. It is. So where there is permitted parking, you have to have a permit as well. So it would be if council wanted to add in a section of paid
okay,
honk parking.
okay, well, I know for a fact that when I've driven along that stretch in the wintertime, that I don't see parking permits on every single one of those vehicles that are parked there. People have been going and parking in that area since we became a municipality, probably before we were municipality, to have access to Lake Simcoe. I've seen how busy it is all the time. I think we're missing an opportunity that we need to look at, because people aren't going to change their patterns, as we found this out at Lake St. John area with how people are parking up there. They now have to pay for parking.
Thanks, Councillor Goff. Deputy Mayor.
I think we've had a great discussion on this. I'd like to actually offer an amended motion that we return this to staff for a staff report and come up with a resolution addressing these concerns, and let staff figure out what works best. They can take into consideration the fines, the loss of revenue, where it takes effect, and we can have that returned. So
respectfully, I haven't even placed the amended motion yet. I already have an amended motion.
Okay, but
so I haven't even placed it.
You had an opportunity to put yours on. I put mine on. So I'd like to see if somebody wants to second it, and we have to vote on that.
So
and then we can go to yours. We have a seconder.
Well, actually, the chair, it's the chair's call when they're ready to put motions on the floor.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to say right out of the gate, if we walk out of this room without solving Simcoe Road, I'm absolving myself of any responsibility, and I will not take a phone call on it. The rest of you can deal with it, frankly. I've had 2 years of people, they're afraid to come outside of their houses. So I'm not willing to defer this. We need to come to some kind of resolution. We are 2 years later. We've already carried it 4 times. So I really think that 4 times is probably sufficient. We need to come up with a resolution. I don't want to drag this on forever. At the end of the day, we need a solution. I'm going to ask one question each right now of infrastructure and bylaw. So from the perspective of road safety right now, can you talk to me about snow clearance? Like, just frame why this is so important that we have the ability to clear snow.
So we do, once the lake freezes, especially at Simcoe Road, because of how narrow the road is and there's no shoulders on the road. So with the original design, having vehicles parked both sides, we can't get the plow through. We had issues last family day. The snowplow actually did hit a parked car. They were able to get down, but when they came back, the car was moved over that little bit. So it unfortunately was hit. Even with parking on one side of the road, it still is narrow because we're always going to have somebody park on the other side, because now that's cleared. The other issue we run into, the ice fishermen typically start coming in 3 o'clock in the morning. So even if we are ticketing, most of our officers don't start till 7. Our patrollers out there 2 o'clock in the morning. Whether or not our patroller has the ability to ticket depends on who the patroller is at that time. But those people that have already parked, they've unloaded, they're on the lake, they're not coming back until the end of the day. So even if you ticket, it's not going to change anything until they come back to park a second time. But because of how much of a draw there is for parking there, you're always going to have people parking. The plan originally was to have parking at the Lake Avenue and Poplar. Unfortunately, that didn't go through. With the reconstruction of Ramara Road 47, we have started creating a parking area concession to in Ramara Road 47, which I was planning in 2026 to propose that in a budget to just essentially have a gravel parking lot there. Proximity to the lake is close. I know we move forward with Brecken Ball Diamond, but honestly, it's quite a ways away from the lake. I don't know how many people are going to park there and then snowmobile all the way down. At least with concession two, proximity's there. You're not even a kilometer away from the lake, less than that, maybe 400 meters. But in the interim, parking always is an issue there. Same with Airport Road. We've kind of played around with Airport Road year after year to try to coordinate that for winter parking and snowmobiles. But it's always an issue. We try to maintain the roads as best as we can, but the road infrastructure isn't built in a manner currently to have on-street parking. Nor do we have the equipment once the trucks and trailers are moved to go in with a loader or a small machine to clear out where those cars were. So it's always going to be difficult. I don't know what the best answer is. No matter what we do, we're going to upset somebody else with whatever decision we make. It's a perfect spot for ice fishing, and that's why we got such a draw there. But if we can at the minimal restrict parking on one side, and then try to work through enforcement as much as we can to have only that one side, it may be doable, but it's not ideal for the maintenance aspects. But I don't think even putting everybody up at the ball diamond's ideal because it's too far away. So
Thank you, Josh. And I think you answered I think I got the answer about what time you start and things like that. So, I mean, the message is clear. Safety is an issue. I understand, Councillor Goff, that we want to bring in some money through the HON cap. I know that, and I will finish, and then I will invite you to speak. And so I know that you want to bring in revenue, and I agree, we need to bring in revenue. But on Simcoe Road, my concern is not revenue. My concern is safety.
I'm fine with no parking on Simcoe Road because I've seen it on both sides of the road. I don't have an issue with that. So I'm fine if you want to amend your motion for Simcoe Road, no parking on both sides. I'm okay with that.
Thank you. So, and I guess what I'll do is I will put the motion on the floor. And then I'm going to make a tiny addition to it on the fly because my computer closed. Okay. So the motion is whereas the Township of Ramara adopted 2023 motions CW 6923 and CW 8423 and 2024 motions CW 4124 and CW 3924, which implemented a waterfront parking strategy and directed further consideration of a long-term parking plan during the winter recreation season to improve safety and allow snow clearance on roadways. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Ramara permit on-street parking on municipal roadways within Lagoon City, including Lakeshore Drive and intersecting side streets from Simcoe Road to Concession A. Designate the north circle of Poplar Crescent as a no-stopping zone to prevent obstruction and block driveways. Permit year-round paid on-street parking at the Lagoon City Trailhead on Laguna Parkway east side from Concession Road 15 to 145 Laguna Parkway. Designate the Brecken Ball Park municipal lot for winter parking December 15 to March 15 for recreational access, Lake Simcoe access. Prohibit parking for Lake Simcoe recreational access on Simcoe Road between December 15 and March 15. And that staff install appropriate signage and enforce parking designations through regular bylaw patrols and penalties for non-compliance. Review and report on the policy's implementation by September 30, 2025, including effectiveness data, resident feedback, and recommendations for future adjustments. I'm going to add C, that staff reach out to the Pier 1 Resort to inquire whether their parking lot may be a location for winter parking during this season, since the inn is currently closed. Are you seconding?
No, I have just another comment for you.
Go ahead.
I know you want to restrict it until March 15th, but people still go out and ice fish for perch and past that. So we need to extend that date.
The reason we chose March 15th is sitting to my left. The season ends on March 15th and the ice huts need to come off. And so it was to stay in keeping with the fire department. And hopefully we don't have people going through the ice.
The ice fishing season isn't over until they still go out. But the season for March 15th is for lake trout and whitefish but perch fishing still continues after that.
Sorry, I'm just going to confirm. I thought the huts have to be off though.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, my comment in the previous meeting was in reflection of the ice huts, and we didn't want to come across as promoting the continued use of that area, and that was my recommendation. I do concur that the fishing season goes on beyond that. However, that was my comment, was so it didn't look like we were endorsing people to continue using that area and bringing ice huts out.
Thank you. Go ahead.
If I may, it's a question. So is this an amendment or is this a new motion? Because it read like a new motion, not an amendment. Amendment would be to change the existing motion. I'm trying to.
It did, because I pulled out anything to do with the municipal parking lot, because we can't deal with that until we get the legal opinion. So I've had to modify the motion that's on the agenda.
Okay, so what I would suggest then, Madam Chair, is that you just get approval from the mover and seconder that this is the new motion on the floor.
Yeah.
That would work.
I can't
And we
remember
don't-
who moved and
right?
seconded.
The clerks are nodding yes.
Yeah, I don't remember who moved and
I
seconded.
think it was Joe and Jen.
Yes, it was moved by Jennifer Fisher, seconded by Joe O'Connell.
I don't know, Councillor Snatch. I think we have to soon wrap this up. Go ahead, but
Last time, because I do live on the lake, I find most of the huts out there now are portable. They set them up during the day and take them down at night. That's the majority. So what Councillor Goff is saying, yes, there will still be people going out there. After March 15th, I don't see what the big deal is by extending it by 15 days if it helps us come to a consensus. But the second question I have is, can you limit trailers rather than cars? Because I know, I was just wondering if the parking can stay, but it's the trailers that are causing a lot of the problem, isn't it? Just asking a question. I don't have any, I'm not taking this anywhere. I just want to know, can you allow a car to park as long as it doesn't have a trailer?
Yes, you just have to be specific in the signage and what it reads. So you could say vehicle or car parking only, no trailers. Typically that's more referred to commercial vehicles though, and tractor trailers. It's not necessarily just the trailers. We even have issues with just pickup trucks, because depending how far over to the right they park, if there's a passenger, they don't want to get out in the snowbank, so they stay over that 4 feet. If it's a trailer, it's an extra 2 feet on top of that. So you just have to be specific in the bylaw and the signage.
Question answered. Thank you.
thank you. And actually some people, because they put their machine in the back of the truck, so they're using snowbanks to back them off, which does create a problem. Councillor Fisher, I'll do one more and then we'll vote.
Yeah, thank you. It actually doesn't pertain to whether or not I'm going to support what you've put forward with the amendment. Of course I am. It was just a question. Josh, you had mentioned that when your staff are out doing patrols of the area, not all of them have the mechanism to be able to do enforcement for overnight parking. What would that take? And maybe this is for discussion for another time. Because we do have our overnight parking, which restricts parking from midnight till 7 a.m. So if we have ice fisher people who are going out earlier than that, I just am wondering what that would look like.
So essentially they'd have to be notarized in a sense to be a provincial offenses officer.
Appointed by bylaw.
Yeah, but there is hesitancy within my staff that some do have it already, but they don't want to give tickets because they don't want their name on it because they're ice fishermen as well. So there is that hesitancy, which I understand. So I don't force them to give out the tickets. It's not their primary job either. So, yes, so by bylaw, they'd have to be appointed a provincial offenses officer to be able to distribute tickets.
On the motion. So
Thank you.
when you read it, number one is still the same, permit on-street parking, municipal road lanes within Lagoon City, that's the same?
Yes, I took those actually out of the original, the staff report that Mr. Popper had provided. So I've used exactly his language and so that we would keep it in keeping with the actual staff report. So yes.
Well, and then so the motion's on the floor now, not an amendment. It is the actual motion.
And so I guess what we could do, if you'd like, I think we can do this so that the clerk can write it up and you can see it in writing. I know sometimes to see it in front of you makes it easier. Could we vote at council? Could we move it to council today? And then you can all read it on that 45 minutes in between. We've all heard it and discussed it inside and out. So I don't think there's any question about what we're talking about. But is there a mechanism that we can just vote in an hour this afternoon?
It will be recorded in the committee of the whole report, which will be passed at council. You'll have a chance to review the motion at that point.
Would staff have time to review the motion yourself, though? You've got to go through all the CW motion 6923.
I believe so.
Because my inclination would be now to move that this be deferred until the next committee of the whole, and we can get a staff report on the changes that are being asked for here. So that would be my motion.
It takes about 12 seconds to pop the numbers open and see that they're there, though.
It's not about that. I want a staff report on these parking changes. Like if I asked you, how many parking tickets did we hand out in November? How many did we hand out? It's your motion.
We already have the staff report. John Popple gave us the staff report. These statements are directly out of his staff report. The staff report was presented to us at the last committee of the whole. So we've all read, I hope, the staff report. Every single one of these statements, other than the statement related to parking at the Breckenball Park. John Popple asked us in his staff report last month, here are the different options you can choose from. It was like a Cracker Jack box. We could pick and choose which of the ones made sense. So I have not changed anything other than exactly what was in that staff report. And these are those statements, all the way down to the east side of Concession Road 5 to 145 or Laguna Parkway. That's all language that bylaws already using. So these are directly out of the staff report. The only difference that we're seeing here is the Breckenball Park aspect and the fact that I've removed the municipal parking lot at Poplar Lake because now we have to wait for the legal opinion.
Correct. So one more question then. So are you still going to table the alternate motion later? Because this does nothing to help Glen Rest. Because the staff report also refers to Glen Rest Drive, I believe, does it not? Oh, it's 6.2. It's a second item. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So I guess I'm not sure exactly what you're asking for. So these are all the statements that came out of that staff report. We deferred from last month to this month. I've modified the motion based on the fact that we now need to remove municipal parking at Poplar Lake. So we're just dealing with what we already had. It's a restatement of what was already there as per John Popple's staff report with the change around the Breckenball Park. So are we okay to vote on that, or do we still have? Because if we're going to vote and we're not going to solve Simcoe Road, then I'm not voting. Then I'm going to stop and we're going to start again because we need to solve Simcoe Road today.
So I have a question to the clerks, if I may. So then you would have time to go through this before the council, because I was going to do a hard stop at noon to give you guys time to do your agenda and everything prior to the 1:30 meeting.
Yes, your worship, I believe so.
Yeah. So the bylaw clearly wouldn't be ready today. Not for this, because so the bylaw wouldn't come into effect until the next council meeting. The bylaw would show up.
Sorry, John Popple said we don't need a bylaw because this is just policy and there's no bylaw required.
Through the chair. So the parking restrictions related to resident permit parking just require the signage to be put in place. So if we look at Lagoon City and Lakeshore Drive and all of those streets, the signage is already in place. It's just continuing what has already been approved for 2024 into 2025. Anything where it's a no stopping or no parking zone that's being added, that would require a bylaw to come back and that be added to the schedule. So there's two parts to that.
Then I'm fine to pull that out and leave it to go with the municipal one that comes up later. It's more for summer anyway. I was just taking your language out of the staff report, so I appreciate that. So we can pull that one out. That can come back with the municipal one.
If I may, we keep changing the motion on the fly, which is why my inclination is now to send it to staff for a report. You mentioned you did have a conversation with the clerks. I'm sure they pointed out to you that we're waiting on the study. So you should have amended the motion before it came here today. You've had time.
Well, I would
do
have loved to do that, but I didn't get the phone call until at the end of the day Friday that my motion was that this matter was being removed from the agenda. So if you don't call me till late on Friday night, I'm a person too, and I can't be running around spending all of my time reacting to on the fly last minute notification that the agenda is being changed without the public's knowledge. So that's not, we can't leave this room and I'm going to go back and tell people Simcoe Road's not solved. I mean, I'll give them all your cell phone numbers. Cool.
That's
But I'm
fine.
not doing it.
So I will move to defer to staff for. a
Great.
report.
Awesome.
Because I'm looking at the motion that's here. That could be a new motion.
As I said, the emotion can be mended. We can remove whatever we need to remove. This is not the end of the world here. We take one sentence out. I can reread it with the one sentence out. It's not a problem.
I do have a motion on the floor. Defer this motion. We still have to have a motion to deal with the report, so new motions can come, but.
Seems like you've made your decision. You've taken over the whole issue here. So, I mean, do you want the chair back?
I've taken over nothing. I put a motion on the floor with your permission. I moved a motion that it be deferred, and I believe the deputy mayor seconded.
Great. So vote. Does anybody want to support that motion? Mm-hmm. Lovely. Okay. So just so that the public is aware, if you have an issue and you can't park on Simcoe Road, please call Councillor Tuyu, Deputy Mayor Bell, the mayor, or Councillor Snatch. Don't call me because I've done 2 years of trying to solve your problem and it can't be done with this council. Okay. So we're going to move on.
Councillor Goff has his hand up. I think he has a comment.
Well, it's already been voted on. It's done. We've deferred.
I can put another motion on the floor.
We've already deferred. How can you put a motion on the floor if we've already deferred?
Sorry, point of order. Can we get some courtesy amongst the council? We must look like idiots on TV.
I want Simcoe Road.
I'm going to go to clarification to the clerk now. There was a motion on the floor. It's been deferred. Does that defer the whole item? I believe it does. I believe Councillor Bell is correct. The item has been deferred.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Sorry, Joe. Okay, so got to get back here now to the right. Okay, so the next item is 6.2, resident only parking, Val Harbor subdivision and Glen Rest Drive. The recommendation is that we receive report CDO 425 resident parking, Val Harbor subdivision and Glen Rest Drive as information, and that resident only permit parking be implemented on Glen Rest Drive, John Street, Peter Street, and on all internal roadways within the Val Harbor subdivision, including Bonnie Beach Road for 2025. I will go first, I think, to Mr. Popple, if there's anything that you feel that you need to add to this.
Sorry.
Yes, why don't I put it on the floor first, Councillor Goff and Jennifer Fisher.
Thank you through the chair. It's fairly self-explanatory. This would add these areas to the resident only permit parking zones and require that signage just be brought back to those areas where it was previously placed. All vehicles entering those areas would have to pass signage just showing them that they require a permit, and then they have to display it on their vehicle.
Thank you, Mr. Popple. Councillor Goff.
Yeah, it was actually me that brought this forward because when I was campaigning for the by-election, it was one of the hot topics in that area. Almost every home on Glen Rest had this issue. I know in the past, we might want to also include, I guess it's the 20th concession and Southview area, because they're parking there and blocking the street as well. I don't know if we can do that at this time or at a later date.
Thank you through the chair. If committee wishes to amend the motion to include additional roads, then I would defer to the clerk on that.
If the additional road it should be part of this, then I'm okay with it. So as long as the mover and seconder are okay with it.
I'd like to amend it to include that area as well.
Is there any other discussion on the floor? Oh, no, Mr. Mayor. Okay, then can we go to a vote, please? All in favor? Great, that's carried. Our final item is 6.3 outdoor special event bylaw, CDO 325. That we receive CDO 325 as information and that we forward the outdoor special event bylaw to council for adoption. Somebody put that on the floor, please. Councillor Goff, Councillor Fisher. I know that we probably all have discussion. I know I received discussion. I'm going to go straight to the interim CAO, Dan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. During the break, I was advised that there was a query from the township's insurer. My understanding is that the recommendation was that this be pulled off the agenda. It was not ready to be pulled at adoption, at the commencement of the meeting. There is no adoption of the agenda. So Madam Clerk, I believe that the email that I received at about 9:35 was that insurance provider was looking for follow-up through legal counsel. So it may be appropriate to have this removed from the agenda, Madam Chair.
Through the chair to CAO Dunn, the report was going to remain on the committee of the whole agenda, but the bylaw has been removed from the special council meeting.
Madam Chair, I apologize. The withdrawal will be noted at adoption of the agenda for council.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm not sure if we even want to have discussion on this matter at this point. I know some of the things I received or concerns I received are around the different fee schedule that is coming along with this. So do we want to just hold off around the table having any discussion? Yeah, and just defer until we have all of that opinion back, as long as that's okay with the mover and seconder.
It's not time sensitive is it? I know we've been getting requests and that's why we're trying to cover ourselves here, but is this time sensitive?
Through the chair to the mayor, we have a event organizer that's proposing a July 1st event of large scale. The bylaw would require that an application be received 90 days prior to that event. So we would need to hopefully have it through the next cycle to ensure that they can meet that. Obviously, if the bylaw is passed with less than 90 days, we would work with that event organizer to work them through the process at that point.
So might I recommend that we put out some communication and invite the communities to engage with us, because some of what I'm receiving is, for example, a nonprofit may not be able to afford the $1,000. Some of our service clubs are quite tiny, and $1,000 would be maybe a big portion of what they might take in. You know, they don't know. So I just wonder, could we do a little bit of community engagement on this? Maybe pop it up on the website and put it out again right away through the council highlights so that we can get some engagement from the community and frame this a little better as CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I suggest, yes, Madam Chair, could it be addressed when the item is brought forward? I'm assuming on January the 26th. It's an opportunity to be able to hear from the township's insurer, from legal counsel, and formulate what that communication would be. I think there's a couple of steps that are missing from where you want to go right now and what needs to be done regarding some follow-up from the insurer, from legal counsel, and have the right communications prepared to go out.
Thank you. I fair enough on that. I guess the only thing I would say, though, is I'll just say this out loud so that it gets into the highlights. But in the highlights, can we at least have some communication that says we're aware that this special events bylaw is new, and please be prepared that there will be the opportunity for community engagement from January 26th onward. And then at least the public knows that we do have the intent to hear from them about framing this bylaw. Councillor Fisher.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor. Just as a matter of procedure, I think because you're chairing, I'd like to put a motion that we defer this until the January 26th to have discussion then, because then we'll have more information, just so that it's done procedurally.
No, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, the only thing I'm just asking for is that it gets captured in the highlights. And so as long as the mover and seconder are good with deferral, then can we,
Actually, just a question on the meeting. Is it a committee or a council meeting? My agenda says it's a council meeting on the 26th. It should be a committee of the whole, isn't it?
Thank you, Your Worship. The matter will have to be deferred until the February 9th Committee of the Whole meeting.
Yes.
Which we can have a discussion, and then it'll go to a February council meeting.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, so then so Jen, can you maybe want to amend your motion so that it has a timeline?
Yep, to defer this to the February 9th committee of the whole meeting for further discussion once we receive further information from our insurer.
Thank you. So can we go to the vote, please? All in favor? Okay, that's carried, and that's it for me. So I'll pass it back to you, Mayor.
If we're okay, we'll go right into transportation services, Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I got a whole bunch of reading to do. Okay, Lagoon City mailboxes. Recommendation that we acknowledge Canada Post is mandated under the Canadian Postal Service Charter to provide a standard of postal service that meets the needs of Canadians, including rural and urban communities, individuals, and businesses, in a fair, transparent, and financially self-sustaining manner, with mechanisms to establish accessible and effective complaint resolution processes to address service deficiencies in a fair, respectful, and timely manner, and that we have identified concerns about postal service deficiencies where satisfactory resolutions through Canada Post's internal complaint resolution process has not been achieved, and that Section 17 of the Charter provides for escalation of unresolved complaints be submitted to the Canada Post Ombudsman for investigation, that we formally initiate a complaint to the Canada Post Ombudsman citing non-compliance with the Canadian Postal Service Charter, and that staff be directed to prepare and file the necessary documentation to ensure the ombudsman process is properly initiated and monitored, and that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Member of Parliament for Simcoe North, the Minister of Public Services, Procurement, and any relevant municipal association advocating for rural and urban postal service improvements. Can I have somebody put that on the floor for me? Councillor Fisher, seconded by Councillor Bell. Discussion. Any? Councillor Fisher?
No, the only thing I want to say is this is something that a lot of members of council have been advocating for a long time, so I think it's long overdue. So I don't know that discussion is necessarily warranted.
Okay, anything further by anybody? All in favor? That is passed. Next item on the agenda is item 7.2, engineering grading drainage plan terms of reference. Recommendation that we receive report ID-02-25 and that engineering grading and drainage plan terms of reference be adopted to establish development design best practices for new developments. Somebody put that on the floor for me. Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor. Discussion. Saying none. Josh, you want to speak? Nope. All in favor? That is carried. Brecon East train crossing. Recommendation, whereas the grade crossing regulations prohibit railway equipment from unnecessarily obstructing public grade crossings, including by leaving equipment standing on a crossing surface or activated warning systems for more than 5 minutes while vehicular and pedestrian traffic is waiting to cross. And whereas Section 98, subsection 1, the regulation requires railway companies and road authorities to collaborate to resolve safety concerns at public grade crossings when a municipality declares by resolution that regular obstruction creates a safety concern. And whereas the Brecon East grade crossing located in the Township of Ramara, County of Simcoe has been regularly obstructed by railway operations, causing significant safety concerns, including delays to emergency response vehicles, risk to public safety near Brecon Public School and the Brecon Ballpark, and traffic congestion that impairs local mobility and access to essential services. And whereas these obstructions contravene the intent of the grade crossing regulation and present an ongoing risk to public safety and community well-being, therefore it be resolved that Council of the Township of Ramara formally declares that the regular obstruction of the Brecon East grade crossings creates a safety concern under Section 98, subsection 1 of the grade crossing regulations, and that the Township of Ramara requests collaboration with the CN Rail and appropriate federal and provincial agencies to resolve these safety concerns through both short-term and long-term solutions. Short-term solution publishing a schedule and reporting when obstructions will occur to provide timely information to all parties. Long-term by constructing a vehicular bridge over the railway to prevent regular obstructions and ensure public safety and consistent community access. And that the Township of Ramara notifies the Federal Minister of Transportation, Provincial Minister of Transportation, CN Rail, and other relevant stakeholders in writing of this resolution. And that council directs staff to initiate the process immediately and work with CN Rail to ensure short-term resolution is in place within the 90-day collaboration and mediation period as stipulated in the grade crossing regulation. And that parties remain in collaboration until the long-term solution and timelines are identified to the satisfaction of all parties. And that if no short-term resolution is reached within the 90-day period as stipulated grade crossing regulations, Township of Ramara will notify the Minister of Transport to escalate the matter for further action. Can somebody put that on the floor for me? Councillor Bell and Councillor Fisher. Mr. Mayor.
I guess I'm going to call a point of order as mayor. I see this as a notice of motion and it needs to come at the council meeting, be read at the council meeting through the process. Read it as a notice of motion. There's been no reports or anything on this item. So this is clearly a notice of motion and we do have council this afternoon. The motion can be read. If council decides and it's time sensitive, we can waive the procedure bylaw and deal with it at that time as a notice of motion. But this is a notice of motion. It's not a motion. So that's my feeling on it. And if
I'll ask the
that's what I'll say, and I'll ask the clerk for direction on that.
Thank you, Worship. It can be moved to the council agenda.
As a notice of motion.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. It actually has been on the agenda before. So I did want to just point out that for some reason in September of 2024, and I'm not actually sure why, but in September of 2024, you'll recall that this was placed on the agenda and it was referenced and it included the presentation that staff gave to the Minister of Transportation at AMO last summer. It included the presentation. It included letters I wrote to MP Chambers and MPs Dunlop and Sarkisian, which in both my communications, they were meant out of respect for those members, because what I didn't want was those members to find out that a change request was naming them and being circulated without their knowledge. And it states very clearly in the letters that I wrote that the matter had not yet been placed appropriately before Ramara Council and or County Council and other bodies. So my notes were just for information purposes to those members. I have actually had the opportunity to speak with MP Chambers about it, which is where the short-term notion came from, because he did indicate his willingness to work with that short-term piece of the motion. So what happened here is at that time in September, I did say, actually, we can't just receive this today because it is yet to be submitted. As we talked about at the last meeting, the intent of the organizers was to submit for the December meeting so that it could make it to Roma. And what happened was the weekend preceding the December meeting, we ended up with a blockage of some 30 odd minutes. And therefore the change was recirculated, which caused that it didn't get submitted to the clerks until the Thursday versus the Wednesday. But I would submit that the information was supplemental anyway, because we had already received the letters, the information from the staff, as well as the link to the change.org where this was being circulated. So all that's left to see, and the clerks are in possession of it right now, is the signatures, which are a sum total, I believe it's 884, but I'd have to open it up. And there are also 3 videos from residents who sat at the track and watched our emergency services not be able to pass, as well as a day where members of the public were leaning out of their windows and waving each other along to access a closed crossing. So I don't know if council wants to see those in order to be able to understand the danger of that crossing. I think we all know the danger of the crossing. It's been dangerous for a very long time. But I feel like if we showed the videos, the public has the opportunity to see it. And I don't know if we want to do that. And if we want to move it to this afternoon, great, we can move it to this afternoon. But I think it's been a very, very long time coming that the council has made the resolution that we want to see a change. And I think we need to make sure that happens today.
Okay. Interim CEO done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Bell, thank you for setting the table. I would just like to say a few things, Mr. Chair. One, deliberations with council regarding discussion points that were going to take place at AMO. Certainly this particular issue was one of the items that was advanced. Second, the reason the material did get incorporated into the agenda subsequent to that briefing at AMO was twofold. One, the reference material that Councillor Bell is referring to, the petitions, the documentation were sent to MPPs and MPs without being tabled by council. And Mr. Mayor, I did speak to you regarding process on this. That's why the material was brought forward in September, to ensure that council received those petitions and the material associated with what was shared at AMO, what was put forward by the residents, with an opportunity to have a complete package. I think it's really important to be able to map out what the next steps are. I also think it's important that it gets addressed at the council meeting later this afternoon with respect to whatever follow-up would be required. But just to be clear, the council provided direction on the items that were going to be addressed at AMO. This was one of them. It was Councillor Bell and a number of residents in the hundreds provided petitions that were forwarded to MPs and MPPs. Subsequent to those distributions, they were brought back to council and tabled, Madam Clerk, at that September meeting to ensure that council received the documentation.
If I may, on the same, well, again, I still see this as a notice of motion because we were told at that time not to receive the petition because there was more names coming. So council hasn't even received the petitions yet or approved the letters that were sent. So to me, I realize time's a factor here, but this is a notice of motion. Council has not dealt with those issues yet we have a motion based on them. So this needs to come as a notice of motion. And anyway, I'm still waiting. And that's, I believe the clerk agrees. This is a notice of motion, needs to be presented at the council meeting.
In favor to waive.
One last.
Thank you. So I just,
If I may, it's now a notice of motion. It'll be discussed at the council.
thank you. I just, in response to CAO Dunn, there was no submission on the part of the organizers. There was a letter from me to my MPs, which I'm allowed to do any single time I like. And that letter was out of respect. And it merely stated that there was a grassroots change that was being requested. It was not submitted. It was not submitted until December 5th. At the same time, it was received by the Township of Ramara Council, County Council, all of the MPs, the members at Rail. So I'm not sure where you're getting the idea that it was submitted. It was not. It was submitted on Thursday, December 5th. It was submitted. The clerk will have that submission. And on that submission will be all of the members who were CC'd. So all of those bodies that we just talked about. I don't know who or how it came to be that somehow somebody thought it was submitted. It was never submitted. It was submitted on December 5th of 2024. So I just want to be clear on that because the organizers did not make a submission. So there was no submission made ahead of what was submitted to this council. It all happened at the same time. For clarity.
Mr. Chairman, during the break, I can verify the communication that was forwarded from Councillor Bell in the distribution of the material in the summer. Certainly, we can have clarity as this is discussed later in council. I distinctly recall, perhaps I'm hallucinating, Councillor, but I distinctly recall material that had a number of signatures and I thought they were petitions. Perhaps I'm incorrect. I'll verify during the break.
I'll gladly share the emails that I sent to each of the MPs as well. And you're right, it did have a link to what was online, but it was
Okay.
not a submission because the submission was not made until December the 5th. And the reason why it had a link is because I think if I were Adam Chambers, Jill Dunlap, or Minister Sarkaria, I wouldn't like to find out because my people were crawling the internet that I was named online somewhere. So I merely acted out of respect for those officials.
Okay, so this is, since I've been told that this is a notice of motion, I have nothing more on Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So unfinished or new business? Yep, we're at the end of, wait, that's the last item, was it not? Yes.
Yep.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I was just wondering what the status is of the climate action change that Councillor Tuyu had been working on and trying to get started. Have we made any progress in that? Do you know,
I'll go to the clerk.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bell. Staff are working on terms of reference. We have a few good samples that we're looking at and expect something within the next couple of months.
wonderful, thank you.
Councillor Goff.
My question is towards Mr. Kavanaugh. Just wondering how the effluent hauling is going. If we have a total so far and how much the snow is hampered.
Thank you, Councillor Goss. So I have data up until December 14th. Up until December 14th, we've hauled 79,000 cubic meters of effluent. We would have hauled December 15th to 21st. I just don't have that information yet. We were shut down for about a week and a half over Christmas, just with that melt and the inflows into Lagoon City system. So they were shut down, but they are back up and running today. We've switched over to larger trucks. So we've gone, basically we were about 6,000 cubic meters a week. With the larger trucks that we have now, we're about 8,000 cubic meters a week. So the ponds are lower than what they were last year. But I still want to continue hauling to get it down as low as we can before the spring. And then hopefully we get a good summer and we're able to spray what we typically would spray every summer. So.
Good. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. I just want to circle back because we didn't solve the parking issue in Lagoon City, specifically to do with Simcoe Road, because we've pushed that all away. So I want to circle back and maybe create a motion to.
What I was going to suggest to the clerk when it comes to the council meeting, and I was going to have a conversation because Councillor Goff mentioned an amendment could be brought in at that time, could it not, when it comes in the council minutes? And then you can put your motion on the floor about Simcoe Street. That is an amendment at the council meeting.
Oh, okay. So not here.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
So when the motion comes forward, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I have quite a list. So, and a lot of them I think we can do quickly, but I'm just going to keep rolling unless there's an issue or a reason to stop me. So I'm going to start with carried motions. I'm going to try to go back chronologically the best I can. Some of them just got taken out, so that'll help move me a little bit faster. So on the matter of photo or automated speed enforcement, I think our last update was on March 4th. And we completed the bylaw to establish all the variety of bylaws we passed at that point in time. The things that were outstanding from the previous motion had been staff would provide the report with the respect to the communication plan and all those other bits and pieces. And I know that this has been a really hard thing to get implemented and you've done a ton of work. So can we get an update or even a staff report next month? Because I know everybody's been out of the office. Either way, if you know things today, cool. And if not, I'll ask for a staff report.
Thank you, through the mayor. I think a staff report would be best, and I can give a fulsome update on where we are. I'm meeting with the ministries this week to get everything so that the signage can go up so we can start the enforcement in that 90-day period.
Can we just get a parameter on the timeline on that staff report, if that's okay, so that we don't let it lag too long? Could it be like April, do you think, or?
The next committee of the whole, for February 9th, I believe was that date.
Okay, so the next one is, I'm going to leave that one actually. Okay, so the next one was about grass and brush maintenance and municipal road allowances. So we've talked about this a few times. The last time we talked about it was in August, and infrastructure brought a report, but we still have not made any kind of a resolution about how we're dealing with trees on private property or trees that bridge private and road allowance, or the hedges that are originating on private and growing into our road allowances. I know that since the summer and up until today, I have about 3 different examples now where the township is actively working with different property owners on resolving this. So I believe that there may already be a process. It's just not a process that is communicated where the public can access it and where council knows what the process is and then is able to facilitate directing people to the process. So I know, again, you've been away, and I'm not going to ask you to answer this today, Josh, but what I'd like to do is just ask for a staff report on what you've learned in doing these last few, and how this process can work moving forward. So how do we charge for it? Who does pay for it? All those kinds of things, the administrative processes as well as the physical processes. So I'm looking at you to see when you think you might be able to come back, like 2 months, something like that.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I think I'll have to work with bylaw on it, because I think what it came down to is a bylaw to enforce maintenance. I can just go in with the road allowance and we trim it and get rid of it. But essentially we don't want to do that. So the February committee meeting, I think we can have a report for them.
I thought we have discussed this and council wasn't interested in a bylaw on.
I think the last direction was to re-bring the same report back.
Okay.
It's the same report. We've all seen it. We've gone through.
And then we can have a discussion on it. But I think the last time we weren't interested in a bylaw regulating trees on private property.
It's not trees on private property. It's trees that are bridging private property on our road allowance. And then it's hedges that grow in and stop the visibility of vehicles.
Typically, if there is sightline concerns, we will trim it
Yeah.
to bring those sightlines back. But we can.
And then the question is who pays for it? Because I don't want to pay for somebody else's hedge. I've already paid for my own thanks as well as my own trees. So that's why
the report is, we don't need a motion on that. The report's coming back. Direction was given, correct? I'm just checking with the clerk.
I think we need a motion and a timeline on it so that the report does come back. Because again, this has been something that's been going since March of 23.
Well, it's something we've discussed and we've decided not to pursue a bylaw. So I'm almost wondering if it's another notice of motion that you would have.
I can understand for clarity, what we're saying is if our trees and our road allowances don't get trimmed and they cause an accident, we're okay with that?
No, we trim them.
And who pays for it?
The township. We trim the
I
trees.
do not want to pay for somebody else's trees. I just took 5 off my property. I don't want to pay for your trees because you didn't clean up.
We've had that discussion. We can have the discussion again, but we weren't going to have the road crew every time they go down the road with a brush equipment stop. Okay, I'm now in front of, and this is a made up number, XXY house. Okay, write the time down. I brush hog past it. Okay, that one's done. It's now 12:43. I'm going past the next yard. Okay, write the time down. Spent 10 minutes at that house. We're not going to do that. And then the first thing that comes back is the homeowner will say is, not my tree. Provide me a survey that says it's my tree. So now we're just into an argument, and it was frivolous for the amount of roadway we have. We clear them if the trees are in the way. We've discussed this. This is the agreement we have. So if you would like a bylaw that we bill the individual, then I think you're going to have to present it as a notice of motion, because we've had this discussion and we weren't interested in trying to bill individuals as we're going down the road brushing trees.
We're not talking about brushing trees. We're talking about trees that are standing in road allowances. But you know what? I've talked about this for 2 years too. So at this point in time, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? If you think I should pay for all those trees out there in rural land, which is what I'm hearing, so be it. I guess general taxpayer gets to eat the problem of people who don't want to clean up the trees on their properties. I'm not going to argue it again. But we'll just leave that hanging out there, that I am trying really hard to make sure that we're not charging the wrong people because other people don't want to do their own maintenance. So we'll move on. The next one was from CD 5224, that staff would provide a report with respect to meadows and naturalized properties. So this is arising from a number of properties who wish to have naturalized versus turf. And there's municipalities around us who are adopting those kinds of bylaws. And they typically talk about what native species you can grow on those properties. So, and again, I know we've all been out of the office. So all I'm asking for here again is for bylaw to be able to tell us when this report might come back so that I can speak to those folks out on Lakeshore and let them know how they can manage those properties.
This is the grass cutting bylaw, I believe. Yes.
If I could bring,
No, sorry, Mayor, it is about naturalized properties. So if they want to have native planting versus grass.
Right.
Yeah.
through the mayor, I think it would be an amendment to the long grass bylaw to for an exemption for those types of properties. And I could bring back a report for the April committee meeting prior to the long grass bylaw coming into effect.
Right, because
for
the long grass
2025.
the long grass one is coming back. So you'll bring this report ahead of it. Yeah. Because it comes back every year and we take a look at it.
Correct.
Thank you. The next one was that staff bring forward a report to amend the fill bylaw. And I feel like we did that, but it's still on my list because I know that there was like pieces of it that were being worked on and it came through a whole bunch of different reports and I'm not 100% sure. So it's just status.
Yeah, there was a report that came back. I don't have it in front of me, but it did come back. There was talk of banning fill importation, but because it's a directive of the province, it would be prohibitive. But we did bring back some clarification on the fill bylaw. If you want to review that, and then if you do want anything further, we can bring a further report at that point.
No, I think I felt like I knew the answer to this, but we had so many conversations. I just want to make sure, and I want to make sure that the public understands what the fill bylaw is too. So I just don't know if we, at the time, did we put out new communication about it, or because that's what I don't know is do the public understand what it is? Because I know Councillor Snutch, for example, has raised a lot of concerns about, seeing trucks on the roads, where are they going, what are they doing, that kind of thing. So I don't know how well that's been communicated, or if we've done recent communication on it. And I guess if we haven't, that would just be my only request is, can we communicate so the public does know? And again, Councillor Snutch would have that peace of mind of knowing he can tell people what the fill bylaw is, where to find it, how it works, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so as far as communication, it would have been in the highlights. There wouldn't have been any targeted communication go out for it, but everything is on the website. Everything can be found there for the fill bylaw.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next one.
We deferred shore wall replacement costing for Bayview Avenue. And I think that one we've completed. So I think I have to double check with infrastructure. I think that one has moved on to a different phase.
Yeah, so we've made the proposal to that proponent. We haven't heard back. I know we did have a meeting with a planner that he hired. But we haven't heard anything back since then. So that one's kind of just sitting waiting on that proponent that did want the property in the beginning.
It's up to the landowner to get back to us now. Yep.
Okay, thank you. The next one was water and sewer billing delegations. So we had gone through the process of moving that out to the public domain, and then we had talked about process. And then so we carried a motion that staff would review the water billing bylaw and then look at the procedure for possible amendments. I don't know whether that's been done. And we have not received a report about any kind of amendments so that the public understands what the process is for water and sewer billing amendments that they want to make. So I don't know who was looking at that. I think it was administrative more than it wasn't necessarily infrastructure. So I just want to know that there is a procedure that's being architected right now, and that procedure will be in the public domain, so that people know how to come to us for an amendment if they want to do that.
Sorry, question. What do you mean by an amendment?
So for example, this is typically when their water doesn't go into the sewer, and they would come and they would say, I don't want to pay. And then it used to be done and closed.
I thought we made a decision that staff would handle all that and it would not come to council.
It says CW 108.24 that staff review the water billing bylaw and look at the procedure for possible amendments. So I'm asking for staff to bring us back what those amendments are so that we can then communicate to the public how they might ask for an amendment.
Yeah, I can work with finance to see if there is any proposed amendments. Because right now it is staff and CAO that determines if there is leeway on it. Typically, if they're able to prove that the water didn't go in the sewer, we may waive the sewer charges. But they have to be able to prove that It didn't go through the sewers.
It's not coming back to council.
So what I'm
Take it up with
asking,
your tax department.
what I'm asking for is that there's a procedure that doesn't say, I like you, so you get an amendment. I don't like you, so you don't get the amendment. Because we have a series of amendments where some people were able to have a reduction, other people were not allowed to have a reduction. So it cannot be a decision of a person who says, on this day, date and time, this is how I feel about the topic, and today I feel differently. So there needs to be a procedure that is applied equally and fairly to all consumers of the services in all the neighborhoods where the services are offered. And so I'm looking for a procedure that says this is how we treat this matter.
And council did not support that. We turned it over to the tax department because it fits under the tax. You're collecting taxes, you negotiate with the treasurer. It's no different than people that are in tax arrears. And we negotiate with the treasury department does. Council does not.
I'm not asking for council to do it. I'm asking to know what the procedure is so that the procedure can be communicated to the public.
That's fine. The procedure that I think Counselor Bell just wants us to say there will be no changes to the procedure and outline that anybody who does that would contact the finance department for further to put their request in.
Well, that was a decision of council. So that's.
I would also.
And I
like
do
to know
have a
the-
request for a break. Do you have many more?
I'd like to just finish this one.
We'll finish
At least I do have many more though, yes. But I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to know what the criteria is. I'm not saying me personally. The public wants to know what the criteria is. Public wants to know what would cause you to say yes to an amendment versus what would cause you to say no to an amendment. And I think that's a very fair question for the public to ask. They need to understand, how do I prove that how do I prove that I'm worthy of an amendment?
Go ahead, Robin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly Ms. Jackson needs an opportunity to understand not only what was said during budget deliberations by the Director of Finance and Treasurer, but also by the Director of Infrastructure. And yes, it's a process matter dealt with by staff. I think between Mr. Kavanaugh, Ms. Higgins, and your Chief Administrative Officer, there'll be an opportunity to understand how staff will be dealing with that and provide clarity to members of the public. But it was not something, at least my understanding, Mr. Mayor, not something that was coming back to council, but to Councillor Bell's point, ensuring that members of the community that have queries understand the process. It's a consistent application of process.
Correct.
Okay, so do you want to, are we taking a break?
We're going to take a break.
Yeah, just provide one thing before you do break. I'd like to go back to an earlier comment I made to Councillor Bell. I was going to do this during the break, but Councillor, I was successful in going back. I hallucinated, Councillor. I remember with great clarity, and now it's been refreshed, September the 23rd. I remembered the correspondence that went to the Ministry of Transportation post our AMO presentation. We actually shared the presentation at AMO. The material, Councillor, that you prepared to the MPPs, to the MP, also the roll-up and petition. And I remembered specifically looking at that linking document. I apologize, Councillor Bell. I was certain that I saw names associated with that petition. The link on the agenda did not show names. However, all in all, that material was received as information to be able to make sure that the next step was had a foundation, and that would be this afternoon in council.
Thank you, CAO. I appreciate that because it was not submitted until December, and I do appreciate that clarification very much. And I'm also really glad that it has already the conversation's already started, which is great. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, what I'll do then, all right, we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll come back, but I do have a hard stop at 12. So everybody 10-minute break, and then we'll come back. Okay, we no longer have Counselor Snatch. She had a previous commitment, but I can get the clerks to verify I still have a quorum.
Yes, your worship, we have quorum.
Okay, thank you. And Counselor Bell, as I informed you during the break, you spent more than 10 minutes on this item, so I will allow one more and then we're going to wrap it up for the day. So did you prioritize?
I'm looking for clarification from the clerk on whenever a matter is placed on the floor and a member has 5 minutes to speak to the matter. Does the entire category called unfinished or new business mean 10 minutes, or if I place a matter, can I then speak to that matter for 5 minutes?
As
want
chair, I
clarification.
will actually intervene as chair of the meeting. It's up my call on how the meeting forward and that it moves forward in a timely manner. If you challenge my decision, you can put it to a vote of council. My decision is you have one more item.
So I would put it to a voting council, but it's a waste of time. So I won't bother doing that because I know how they're going to vote. I'll just take it to the ombudsman instead. So the one that I probably will focus on then, what do I want to do here? See, here's the thing. I wouldn't have to do this if we were
Okay,
being
I would
answered.
look for a motion to adjourn then, because I did tell you during the break.
We're not adjourning, really? Okay, to the
So can I
ombudsman.
have
you
a
go.
motion to
Thank you.
adjourn, moved by the deputy mayor,
Thank
thanks,
you.
scientist.
Not
With all in favor of the
process
adjournment,
as
that
per
is carried.
usual.
Thank you.